akin to breathing, according to Aristotle, but then he said lots of odd things. Essentially, Chaucer uses these varying pronunciations to his advantage, to metrical necessity. There are also false friends. Again, false friends are something that you'll come across in foreign language learning. But here, these are false friends in terms of phonology, or pronunciation. So we'd usually say in English, execution, fornication, defamation. In Chaucer's verse, you pronounce all of those syllables. Execution. The diphthong there, where it's sort of making a sh sound, shon, sion. Again, so it affects how you pronounce it. This is the one I've mentioned, the Reeve's Tale. In this, Chaucer, acknowledging the regional variations in Middle English, writes a tale in the Northern dialect. It's quite a clever thing to do. But it also shows how Chaucer is familiar with this dialect. Again, he's a Londoner. You've got mass migration to the capital in this period. So we'll have a quick look through this, just to, again, to pick up on some of those northern elements we've seen before. And it's interesting to compare what Chaucer does here with a genuine northern dialect, as we saw, for example, in Gawain and the Green Knight. So it's basically in the Reeve's Tale, you've got two students, John and Alan, and they have to get revenge on a miller. And they do so by sleeping with his wife and daughter, and they escape and they get in lots of trouble. It's a fablio. Again, it's even the very form. It's a French form of poetic tale, which involves sort of lewd goings-on. And Chaucer writes these, but as we also know, he writes courtly verse. And because he's writing a kind of lewd tale, he uses those different regional variations because he wants to give the language, the actual words that people used. So I'll just go through this one and see if you can try and remember some of those characteristics of Northern English from Monday. So John hicht dat on, and Alain hicht dat toether. Of a tune they were born at hicht the struther, fair in the north, he cannot tell it where. There you've got a kind of dismissal of the north anyway. John was called one of them, and the other one was called Alan. They were born in a town called Struther. It's far up in the north. I don't know where it is. He's a southerner, doesn't want to know. You know, that place, the north. And here you get example of them speaking. Simon, what John, be God. Ned has na pear. Imbo serve himself that has na swine. Or else he is a fall, as clerk is sign. Ur a mansipon. He hope he will be dead. Swa work as either wang is in his head. And forth he is he come. And egg alone. To green our corn and carry it home again. He pray your spade as head and that you may. Be God, rich be the hopper will he stand, quoth John. And say how gats as the corn goes in. Yet sag he never be me father a kin, how that the hopper waggers till and fra. Alain answered, John, and will how swap? Then will he be beneath the be me croon, and say how that the male of fallers doing into the trough, that saw be me the sport. For Johnny faith, he may have been of your sort. He is as ill a miller as are ye. They're not saying anything of vast importance. Can anyone work out what they seem to be talking about? Basically, they've come to get some corn ground by the miller. It's not saying it's not the best part of the story. This is just setting the scene. An interesting thing there. Or emancipal, he hope he will be dead. He's not saying I hope our emancipal is dead. It's the subjunctive. Hope there means I suspect or believe. So it's another one of those false friends. And basically, John is saying, I will stand by the hopper and see how the corn goes in. Because he's never seen how the hopper, the corn, goes to and fro. Then will he stand beneath and see how the cornmeal falls down. Again, it's fascinating, isn't it? You can just see it's the production of corn in the 14th century. For John, I've been of your sort, I'm a rubbish miller. I don't know anything about it. Again, the content we're not too bothered with, it's the forms. So the distinctive features of Chaucer's mock northern dialect, the Old English a appears as a, or a, again, and instead of Chaucer's usual op or u. So, Gas means goes. Soit means so, which Chaucer would pronounce sou. Again, he pronounced goes as goose. And ham is home. So, again, the main thing is that you're seeing substitution of the A for the O, the long vowels. The Old English consonant group, which ends in LC, it's pronounced ilch. Usually ilch appears as ilk. Again, which is more sort of northern. Ilch, swilk, meaning such, or whilk, meaning while. The initial consonant of shall appears as S. So, it's spelled S-A-L, it's pronounced shall. Third singular and plural present indicative of verbs appears as ES, which we've seen in Galway. So this seems to be, again, one of the standout aspects of the present indicative. It doesn't end in eth as in maketh or taketh or reeteth, but it's markers, reeters, takers, makes, writes, takes. Pronominal form there, which Chaucer uses only in this tale, although it later became acceptable in London English, was presumably still felt to be northern. So Chaucer, instead of saying there in his other works, will say here. Again, if you look on your table of pronouns, it will explain that. There's also just a number of words which are suggestive of the northern dialect. So as heithing, heithen, illa, imel, lather, which are all Scandinavian. Bos, pit for put, if for if, and what have we got there? Ta for taka. It's worth considering the way in which language develops because of manuscript culture. I mentioned it in the lecture on Monday, for example, why you might use a Y instead of an I at the beginning of a word if it begins with a U, an N, or an M. Because when you're writing these things down in the manuscript, in the English hand, you can't tell them apart. So that scribal culture is not something to be underestimated because it does have an effect on how the language is actually used and pronounced and develops. There are no speech marks in manuscripts. There are no commas or full stops. Capital letters beginning of each line, and no apostrophes. Again, the Frere's tale, the Friar's tale, in God's name, in God's name. And remember from Monday that there's a potential for confusion between the genitive form, as in friars with an apostrophe, and the plural form, friars, without the apostrophe. There's no distinction in Middle English usage. The dominant English script of the period is called Cursiva Anglicana, or sometimes Anglicana Formata. It's a very, very complex system of abbreviation. If you ever have the misfortune to become, as I am, a medievalist, you have to remember all these wicked things. So I've got a book here which will show you some of them as they appear in manuscripts. And finally, there's the use of virgules, which we call // to note hemisticks or half lines. And the virgule eventually shrinks, becomes sort of commas. I'll give you an example. It's quite hard to see, so I've given a transcription underneath. You can see the virgule in a shortened form. Again, it's better when you look at this when you download it. There, that little slash, you can see relative to the size of the letters, it's starting to resemble the comma. But it's meant to be a slash in the middle. So, Chwilom, as all the stories tell us, there was a dicht Theseus. And you can see one of those abbreviations there. It's just a thorn with a little T on a superscript, which means that. If you have, I put it there just to make it clearer. You've also got the same kind of thing for with, the W with the superscript T. So how these words actually appear does change upon how we look at them, how they develop and how they're pronounced. But just to conclude it, with Dryden discussing Chaucer, he must have been a man of a most wonderful comprehensive nature because, as has been truly observed of him, he has taken into the compass of his Canterbury Tales the various manners and humours, as we now call them, of the whole English nation. In his age, the matter and manner of their tales and of their telling are so suited to their different educations, humours and callings that each of them would be improper in any other mouth. 'tis sufficient to say, according to the proverb, that here is God's plenty. And that the words and the humours would be improper in any other mouth shows Chaucer's understanding of how English is working in the 14th century, even though it's relatively new in its sort of written and recorded form. That's why the Reeve tells the Northern Tale, why the prioress speaks certain kinds of French. It's understanding the various different influences upon the language that he eventually becomes known as the father of. We'll have a break there and look at some stuff in a minute.